Good afternoon. My name is Caitlin Donaldson. I'm a curator for the Lorain Historical Society. Thank you all for joining us. Today is October 20th, 2020. If you're joining us here live, then you know that today's program is being offered for free. The program is part of our third Tuesday program series that we adapted to being online because of COVID. If you are enjoying these programs and would like to support the museum during these times, please consider becoming a member, renewing your membership early, or making a contribution to our end of the year annual appeal. Any support is greatly appreciated. Our museum did open in August, and we are maintaining COVID safety measures outlined by the Ohio Department of Health and in conjunction with the Lorain County Health Department. Our museum and gift shop are now open. With the holidays right around the corner, please keep our gift shop in mind, which has a great selection of Lorain-themed and handmade items. The best way to stay up to date on our activities is to join our e-news list, which you can get on the list by emailing info@lorainhistory.org. Our next third Tuesday History from Home program will be a presentation by Dr. Craig Semsel called Lorain Veterans During World War I. Did you know that Lorainites served in every major battle of World War I? They did. So Craig will share stories of Lorainites who served, including journal entries and letters from home, and he'll intertwine those stories into a narrative of the history of the war. He gave this program in 2018, or at least a couple years ago, and it was fascinating. So I hope you'll be available next third Tuesday in November. All right, so welcome to Vintage Halloween. Happy Halloween, everyone. Yay. Oops. Make sure my screen's working. There we go. So today I'll go over our inspiration for the program, a little background in the evolution of Halloween. I'll share some Halloween decorations of yore. We'll share some Lorain Halloween stories, which is my favorite part. I'll show you how we decorated the Moore House for Halloween last year. And then we'll conclude with some Halloween party games, which I am going to creatively attempt to play with you all virtually. And then we'll take questions at the end. Oh, I forgot to add, if you have questions or comments as we go along, please use the chat feature. My partner in crime, Bethany, is monitoring the chat feed, and she can respond to your questions and try and help. If you have run into any issues, she's leaving a comment now, I believe, so that you can see where the chat feature is. She'll ask me all the questions that you have at the end. Okay. All right. So our inspiration for this tour came from Eleanor Moore. Eleanor was born October 31st, 1903, and she was the youngest daughter of Leonard and Carrie Moore. One of our properties is the Moore House, and it is where we tell the story of the Moore family, particularly Leonard Moore, who was mayor from 1916 to 1917. And he's the person we can credit for the existence of Lakeview Park. So Eleanor was born on Halloween, and while growing up, she was reportedly not allowed to really celebrate Halloween because her parents would always throw her a birthday party. Her son Robert recalled regarding Halloween that their family always celebrated in a big way. That was in his childhood. He said it may have been Mother's way of having fun that she never really got to have as a girl. Since we know that Eleanor loved Halloween so much, we never got to really participate in it as a child, we thought we'd dedicate this program to her as a slight nod to the Halloween party she never quite got to have in her childhood home. And a little side note, she was the only Moore daughter to marry, and she married James Lyons, and they eventually moved to California. So Eleanor's son, Robert Lyons, is living in California now. And a second note of inspiration for this program is a shout out to Jillian Zudell, who initially created this program last year, and she was working on her master's thesis on the history of Halloween decorations. So she was a great inspiration and insight, and she actually created this program when we did it at the Moore House last year. So this is an undated photo of the Moore House, likely from the 1910s, with all three sisters out front. So this Zoom program today is an adaptation of several in-person tours that we did of the Moore House last fall, featuring vintage Halloween traditions. We decorated the Moore House with a mix of actual antique decorations and reproductions. We tried our best to follow the traditional styles for how the home might have been decorated back then, and you'll see some of the decor as we go along in the program. So most people think of the golden age of Halloween as being in the 1950s and 1960s. That post-World War II time, when American life was epitomized by the nuclear family living in their suburban house. Those decades saw the rise of the middle class and increased financial security, which allowed for some more time and money to be spent on leisure activities, such as Halloween parties and costumes. When people of the baby boomer generation think back to their childhood or early adult lives, they commonly remember trick-or-treaters running around the neighborhood in store-bought costumes and dressing up like their favorite TV character or spooky witch. So this is an advertisement from Kmart from 1968, which was in the Lorain Journal, and it gives you an idea of what some of the store-bought costumes were available at the time. So while Halloween was quite popular in the 50s and 60s, the fall festival was already a major part of American culture by the 1910s and 20s as well. The newspaper on the right is a beautiful full-page article from a newspaper in Philadelphia, which I just had to share. I haven't yet found one as representative as this for Lorain, but searching the microfilm at the library has revealed a few gems. We did find the article on the left, which is advertising how to make your own homemade decorations out of colored paper and crepe paper. Modern traditions of Halloween are based on the pre-Christian Celtic festival of what looks like it should be pronounced Samhain, but it's actually pronounced Samhain. The ancient Celts lived across the British Isles and onto the European continent, although the traditions most associated with Halloween come from the ancient Irish and Scottish fall festival celebrations, their fall festival celebrations specifically. And Samhain was a fall festival celebrated around November 1st. Autumn is a transition between the prosperous, bountiful harvest and the dormant, barren winter. Because of that feeling of transition, people believe that the veil between the supernatural and living realms were lifted. For the Middle Ages, when the Christian church spread across Europe, it had a great impact on the culture of the pagan people and their celebrations. Some argue that in order to gain support for the religion and assimilate the pagans into the new culture, the church appropriated many pagan festivals to fit the Christian calendar. Days reserved for seasonal adoration of nature or old gods were replaced with days now dedicated to saints. Samhain, which is focused on the supernatural world, on life and death, and the gateway between the two, became the Christian celebration of All Saints or All Hallows Day. The Christian holy day was a celebration of the saints and was followed on November 2nd by All Souls Day, which celebrated all who have died. As was customary in the region, celebrations began the night before a festival, and so the name All Hallows Eve originated from this custom. Although paganism was not encouraged by the church, many of the traditional celebrations of Samhain remained popular as All Hallows Eve evolved. So moving into the 1800s, to answer the question, when did Halloween come to America? As large numbers of Irish and Scottish immigrants migrated to the United States during the early to mid-1800s, they brought many of their customs with them, including Halloween. The potato famine caused one of the largest waves of mass immigrations of Irish to America. However, it is important to note that the Irish and Scottish did immigrate to the United States before and after the catastrophe as well. Although there is some evidence of Halloween celebrations in colonial America, they were not very common, nor were they community-wide events. However, in places where it was celebrated, Halloween was used as a means to express their ethnic identity. The images I have selected here, some of the first wooden shipbuilders in Lorain were people from Scotland, and the Irish were also founders of St. Mary's Church, and this is the original church before it was destroyed by the tornado. Although I don't have sources to outright document who brought Halloween to Lorain, if Lorain followed national trends, some of the first people to celebrate could easily have been the early and Scottish immigrants. By the end of the 1800s and the early years of the next century, Halloween had become a significant celebration in the American calendar, No longer was it reserved just for the Irish and Scottish. It had become a recurring theme in popular books, greeting cards, magazines, and advertisements. As Halloween showed up more in popular culture, it helped increase its accessibility as a fun, safe, and family-friendly celebration. At the same time, Halloween was also becoming a very profitable annual event, and several companies began to specialize in Halloween decorations. One of the best-known companies at the time was the Dennison Manufacturing Company, based out of Massachusetts. They were the first American company to import and then make tissue and crepe paper, and they were known for their tags, like gift tags or label tags. Dennison goods were sold in stores across the nation. They produced several different cereal catalogs advertised in magazines and would also hold classes on how to make decorations with their products. They became known for their annual BOGIE books, which were first published in 1909 and would continue to be published for several decades. While looking for Halloween references in Lorain, we found 2 articles advertising Dennison products in the newspaper. Jokingly, we refer to Dennison as the Martha Stewart or Pinterest of the early 1900s. The Bogie books would explain, here's how to throw a lovely Halloween party. Here's all the things you need. These are all the games you need to play. This is how you have a great event. And then they'd also add, and also, this is where you can purchase everything you need to throw the perfect Halloween party. In the ad for the Geffen Pharmacy, the ad says, Halloween, novelties of all kinds, black and orange crepe paper. And the image on that ad is of 2 people embracing or dancing wearing festive hats. The ad on the right for Eldred's is directly advertising Dennison products for Halloween. I was intrigued by this little anthropomorphic leaf image, which I found out was their spooky take on an autumn leaf decoration. So I found him in a colorized Bogie book from 1920, and I circled him there in the middle. Jack-o'-lanterns were initially carved to help scare away goblins. The Irish and Scottish would have traditionally carved turnips or gourds instead of pumpkins. However, in the Americas, people adopted pumpkins into their traditions because that was what was readily available, and they also made for better carvings. These papier-mâché jack-o'-lanterns are in our collection in our mass-produced Halloween decorations. The Saturday Evening Post from 1909 shows the holiday's growing acceptance into popular culture, and this Bogie book from 1925 includes instructions for how a young working woman could throw a Halloween party, which shows partially how they changed with the times when women were gaining independence before marriage. And I find it interesting that their expert advice on how a working woman should prepare for a Halloween party was to simply do all the work beforehand so that it's all ready for when you get home from work, which just made me laugh. Okay, so now we'll get into my favorite part, which are stories that we found in the Lorain paper. Oh, one moment. One second. I'm sorry, I need to check something with Zoom. Oops. Okay, I forgot to make, I'm sorry everyone, I forgot to make Bethany a co-host so that she could have the controls and could check the chat feature the way she needs to. Okay. All right, thank you for bearing with me. All right, so my favorite part, stories from Lorain that we found in the newspapers of the library. These articles reveal what youths of Lorain were getting up to on Halloween. And remember, this is a period of time, for the most part, that predates what we traditionally think of as trick-or-treating. So the trick-or-treating that we know today hasn't quite been cemented into the holiday yet. So if we found an article in 1911, warning from the mayor stating boys who soap windows will be sent to jail. And in 1917, Lorain's chief of police at the time was someone named Chief Stankard. And this article titled Chief Issues Usual Don'ts for Halloween, Innocent Amusements to be Permitted, but Not Rough Stuff. This article sheds some lights on what adults thought the youths of Lorain were getting up to. At this time, Leonard Moore was serving his last year in office as mayor. Given the implications in the article, Halloween-related pranking would surely have been a prominent issue on his mind. And at the time, his 3 daughters would have been between the ages of 14 and 18. So other warnings from this article include, masquerade and carry your jack-o'-lanterns, boys and girls, but refrain from destroying property. Notice is hereby given that rowdyism, vandalism, destruction of property, and removing of the same will not be tolerated on Halloween. Police are instructed to make arrests, and all violators will be prosecuted. The police will not interfere with the younger element as long as it confines its efforts to masquerading, carrying jack-o'-lanterns, and other innocent amusements. The officers have been instructed to arrest any persons who remove steps from the residence. So I guess stealing porch steps was an issue. And it says several accidents, some of them fatal, have resulted in the past as a result of such activities, and the police will not permit this sort of thing. And then other offenses that were noted were defacing windows with wax or chalk. In 1912, we found articles on a Halloween window display, which demonstrates that businesses were using Halloween in their regular advertising. In 1912, Campfire Girls, a group of Campfire Girls, which is like Girl Scouts, I suppose, a group of Campfire Girls held a progressive dinner. And in the article, it details the social group's Halloween-themed party from when they went from home to home. And the article outlined what foods were eaten at each house, how each home was decorated, and what party games were played all over the course of the night. In 1917, the Benevolent Order of the Elks had a funny tongue-in-cheek invitation to the Elks Halloween party. It says, Halloween to be observed by the Benevolent Order of the Elks. The Ghoulish Glee Quartet will sing by special request, redacted, and other well-known numbers. Some of our redacted actors will be put on their best, redacted. There will be Eats a Plenty, our new steward having arranged for a large supply of redacted, including redacted in abundance for all. A few of these articles were found for the year of 1917. This was one of the years Leonard Moore was mayor, and it also happens to be the beginning of the United States involvement during World War I. If we revisit the last line in Chief Stankard's announcement, we see the statement, owing to the scarcity of vegetables and cereals, few parents will permit these needed articles to be pelted at houses this year. And the reason for that was because of rationing during World War I. And because of the war, 1918 was the only year that Dennison did not produce a bogie book. Instead, they produced a patriotic catalog that promoted the use of crepe paper instead of fabric for bunting or decorations. So looking back at the Moore house, as I said, we did decorate it for Halloween, and we tried to keep in mind the time period and keeping in the spirit of celebrating a Halloween party for Eleanor. From the catalogs, the Dennison catalogs, you could purchase die cutouts, napkins, table decorations, colored tissue paper, and crepe paper. Crepe paper was just crinkled tissue paper and was a relatively recent invention and was popular for its potential to decorate for a spooky Halloween party. So in the living room, we picked black cats as our theme. Black cats were popular because they are associated with being a witch's familiar. The belief in witches stems from the Middle Ages. And if you're wondering about the traditional Halloween colors of orange and black, Orange is supposed to represent autumn and fall, while black is winter, and the pair make a nice visual contrast. So you can see this is the living room of the Moore house, where we strung up streamers and we had the cardboard die cutouts. Some of these are originals and some of them are reproductions. And then in the foyer, we had more streamers and we kind of had a pumpkin theme. It was an interesting challenge to decorate a historic home. We couldn't tape or use sticky tack or drill in nails, so we had to tie and hang as many things as possible in ways that would not damage the wallpaper or peel up the wood varnish. Halloween-themed postcards would have also been sent. As Halloween became more mainstream and a part of popular culture, more Halloween postcards became available. We have postcards from the Moore family from other holidays, Christmas and Easter, but we don't have any Halloween. So these are just other Halloween postcards that Lorainites might have been sending at this time. And then more streamers, and this is how we sort of interpreted what the Bogie book's images on how to decorate, how we incorporated those into the Moore house. Moving on to costumes and trick-or-treating. Pranking and masking, which was also known as mumming, were popular activities in the early modern times and are similar in many ways to the trick-or-treating that we usually associate with Halloween today. Young people, generally men, would dress up and run around causing mayhem. They would only stop their pranks and roughhousing in exchange for treats. It is interesting to note that mumming was actually associated with Christmas more so than with Halloween. However, Halloween was sort of the unofficial start of the Christmas season. So the pranking and revelry started near the end of October and continued through the new year. Though slightly different than modern trick-or-treating, the customs are related and pranking remains a staple in modern Halloween traditions. In these images from the various Bogie books, you can see how the costume suggestions from Dennison's quickly evolved. In an early edition of the Bogie book, the costumes were crude and a bit garish. As fashions changed, so did the costumes. Childish creatures became simple cray aprons and later became stylish, sleek dresses. Trick-or-treating as we recognize it today really started in the years after World War II. That time is epitomized by costumes, candy, and homemade treats. Store-bought costumes were available and quite popular in the post-World War II years. Even so, homemade costumes remained quite popular as well. Similar to Dennison's Bogie books, other books such as How to Amuse Yourself and Others, The American Girl's Handybook, which was printed in 1897, were resources for holiday party activities and games. Of all the activities in the American Girl's Handybook, one chapter details several games for hosting an amusing Halloween party. And a lot of the games focused on predictions of fortunes and love. So I want to read you an excerpt from the American Girl's Handybook about the nature of the fortune-telling games. Before proceeding further with this subject, we desire our readers to appreciate and fully understand that we are far from wishing to inculcate any superstitious belief in the power of charms to forecast future events, that we regard all fortune-telling as nonsense, pure and simple, and only insert it here as we would any other game for the sake of the amusement it affords. So on the mantle in this picture, we have an original paper party hat, noisemakers, and the Crystal Fortunes game. So that we can play this game virtually, I've divided you into categories and I'll read your fortune from this game. I spun the fortune in advance of the presentation so that you all can play along. So if your birthday falls on an even number, then you'll be fortune number 2, and an odd number, then you're fortune number 7. So for each number, there was also a fortune for both boys and girls, so I'll let you sort yourselves accordingly. Okay, I'll read your fortunes now, and I apologize in advance for the even number people, which includes myself as an even number birthday. So if you're an even number, for boys, your fortune is, at 50, you'll be grumpy, fat, round, and very stumpy.
And for girls, you will always have to work, so that duty never shirk. And then for the odd number people, for boys, your life will be happy and free and full of mischief and glee. For girls, your fortune is good, you see, for you will contented be. So the odd number people got off a little bit better, I think. And then I have two games here that I'll just explain to you, and I'll let you play those at home if you wish. The first is the magic mirror game. The magic mirror, which is simply a hand glass on ordinary occasions and gains its mysterious power only on Halloween, divulges under certain conditions the delightful secret of how many bits of good fortune will fall to one's sharing during the ensuing year. The conditions are that the person wishing to know how bright her prospects are shall go to an open window or door from which the moon is visible, and standing with her face indoors, hold the mirror so that the moon will be reflected in it. The number of moons she sees there betokens the number of times something pleasant will happen to her before the advent of another Halloween. And then the second game is called Melted Lead. And melted lead was used to ascertain what the occupation of one's future husband would be. The fortune is told in this way. Each girl in turn holds a door key in one hand, while with the other hand she pours the melted lead from an iron spoon or ladle through the handle of the key into a pan of cold water. In the fanciful shapes the lead assumes can be traced some resemblance to all sorts of things. Sometimes it is a sword or gun, which indicates that a soldier will win the fair prize. Again, traces of a ship may be seen. Then the favored one is to be a sailor. A plow suggests a farmer, a book, a professor, or perhaps a minister. And when the lead forms only drops, it seems to mean that the gentle inquirer will not marry, or if she does, her husband will be of no profession. So I'll let you play those at home on your own. But our last game of the program, which we will play, is called Caling, and that's the image on the right, which I'll explain here. To play a game called Caling, you would be blindfolded and sent out into the back garden, where you would then pull a stalk of kale from the ground, and depending on how the dirt clung to the stalk of kale would decide your fortune. So if you didn't have kale, you could substitute cabbage, beets, or just about any vegetable. So everyone, please imagine you've just been blindfolded and plucked these stalks of kale from the garden. Use your birth month to see what you found, and if my little talking box face is in the way, know that you can click that and drag it away, because I just realized that part of one of the kales might be blocked by my face. So just drag and move me around. All right, so you've just gone out, you've plucked these kales, you see where your birthday lies, that is the kale that you have chosen. All right, so I'll now read your fortune. According to the state of the stalk, so will be the gatherer's fate. If it is straight or crooked, large or small, so will the future husband be, or we'll say partner, since the game was designed for girls, but we'll say partner for this game. So will the future partner be. If it has a pleasant taste or the reverse, the character of the person will correspond. And the quantity of earth clinging to the roots denotes whether their riches will be little or great. So I hope you enjoyed that. And that concludes our program. I hope you've enjoyed learning about the history of vintage Halloween, and that you have a better insight into some of the fascinating origins of the holiday and how they became adapted to our current culture, but was already in place going back to the 1910s and 1920s. Thank you all. Once again, if you are not receiving our e-news, please email us at info@lorainhistory and we will sign you up.
That's the best way to stay informed. Our next program, our next third Tuesday program will be November 17th, Lorain Veterans During World War I by Dr. Craig Semsel. So you're all invited to join for there.